Hello, everyone. My name is Candace Isaacs, and this is my Indian water buffalo herd health plan and the custom GPT tool I made. Now, my background is with a major in animal science, specifically in food production. I am a senior, and this is my fifth year, hoping to graduate next year. My origin is from the Bay Area, or more specifically, Vallejo, which doesn't really have much agriculture, but we still have a few things here and there. And then the animal I chose was the water buffalo, and specifically in India. Now, why my animal and the location? Well, first off, I am interested in bovines. I have been mostly studying them, and I've worked on previous cow herd health plans, and I worked also on bison topics. I'm also really interested in just the domestication of water buffalo, and especially compared to Cape buffalo, because I did consider them, but just something about how the water buffalo are so docile and calm and work well with us humans makes them pretty interesting to me. And I also chose India because that is where most water buffalo reside in, so why not? Now, why a herd health plan to begin with? Well, it has many uses, and one of them is definitely structure for our management. A structure brings order to it, it brings predictability in case of an emergency or a weird scenario, and overall just brings in efficiency to our herd management. It also helps with our animal welfare, it keeps them healthy, and just reduces the overall stress that could possibly be inflicted on them if we didn't have one. And of course, as we learn in class, one of the most important things is the prevention. Prevention is very necessary to keep a farm operation productive. And if anything does get past those prevention, we need treatments. So a herd health plan would be very useful in vaccines for the prevention and then diagnosis and possible controls and treatments afterwards. And it also just helps out our livestock profitability, whether the animals are well enough to give us that profit or if we possibly need to cull an animal. And of course, it helps our reproductive efficiency and in keeping those good genes in our herd and not wanting to cull them out. And of course, at the end of the day, this is for products, so it is also for the product safety for the consumer. Now, I want to discuss the process of creating my GPT tool. And the first part of that process was finding good resources. And not gonna lie, it was kind of hard finding a good amount of resources that contradict each other or mess with the system too much. So I mainly focused on overall water buffalo welfare or nutritional management for them, viral diseases that could infect them, immunizations that could be used, studies of effects of certain vaccinations, and trying to make sure they're India based. And then I went on to the configuration of the tool, where I mostly use the create portion, where I asked it to do certain things, I asked it to avoid other things. Like, for example, I asked it to have a more professional tone, because usually when I use a GPT tool, it has that weird, almost childlike talking to you kind of sense. So I wanted this to be more professional since hey, it might be used for actual farmers. And then finally, I gave it test scenarios where I tested on certain diagnosis, certain treatments, certain preventions, types of vaccines, the most susceptible kinds of viruses or diseases, and all those different kinds of scenarios. And now I want to showcase my GPT tool and show you the features that it has. So we're just going to get out of this and bring it on over. And so here it is, Indian water buffalo herd health. And I've got a few starter conversations, but I want to go behind the scenes and show you guys a bit more. And I gave it the description of a professional advisor for Indian water buffalo care and herd management. And I wanted this to range from not just from smallholders, but also to larger commercial operations and just in between. I also tried to base it on like local regions in India where you'll get to see later where it specifically will ask you about what your region is and what you're dealing with. And I just also wanted to have it tailored to feed plans, vaccination schedules, breeding strategies, disease prevention, and a bunch of other stuff where it would be typical in a herd health plan. And I also gave it the possibility to have like a Hindi a language come up here and there, but I mostly just kept it in English. There is like the option to switch over to fully Indian or Hindi, but we're just gonna keep it English for simplicity. And I also believe I added government veterinary programs in there as well. And I wanted to have it in a style where it gave you more of like a table style. That's more my thing. Or if it does give you information about something, it will have like an explanatory paragraph. I also made sure it avoids offering direct medical prescriptions or instructions that would give a inexperienced farmer some trouble, obviously. So I made sure it would encourage that a consultation with a licensed veteran for a diagnosis or treatment is definitely necessary and to not fully just base it off of this GPT tool. So let's put this thing into action. So let's take over our herd health plans here. This one. And let's give it this scenario where we make a herd health plan for 100 mare buffalo, 75 female, 5 male, and 23-month-old female calves. And it gives us our composition, it gives us our vaccine schedule, all India baseline. And just by looking at these up front, these are very important vaccines to be taken into consideration. It keeps some more things into consideration. It has a deworming, an parasite control, has a nice feeding nutrition for any lactating, dry, breeding bull, or our calves. Has housing for them, disease and surveillance testing, breeding and fertility management, seasonal advisory summaries, and government support access for us. And like I said before, I like to make it tailored to a specific part of India. So let's say this part. You want you to adjust it to Haryana. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And then it gives us things to consider about Haryana and the climate and risk snapshot. And as you can see here, heat stress, monsoon season, aphylaxis risk, things like that. And this time it gives us a month by month vaccination calendar, which is very nice, depending on the region. Feeding Rona, housing, everything we saw before mostly. Season of dues in there. And yeah, it's very nice. Now let's give it this question. If one of my cows gets foot and mouth disease, what should I do? Mouth disease, recognize the early signs, immediate on-farm isolation, inform the authorities, which unfortunately does not happen as often you like, supportive care for them, disinfect and protect the rest of the herd, recovery monitoring, keep precautions, and prevent future outbreaks. And we see down here, we can do a printable FMD emergency poster with Hindi and English, but timing, we're not going to do that for now, and we're going to skip this last one. Now for the challenges and limitations. And the challenges for me were getting the right resources because having it just due from my resources was hard. I kind of had to do the web research one, or it would give me really simple or answers that were just really lacking, and I would need a lot more resources just to even compare. And sometimes the tool wouldn't really present in a comprehensive manner. It would be sometimes vague, it would have contradicting statements here and there, and I wouldn't always get the most satisfying response that I wanted. And the limitations would be like it could only give me so many preventions and treatments. It would struggle sometimes to adapt to the emergency scenarios I gave it, and even then, not all the suggested scenarios that it gave me were doable because it cost time and resources, which I did try to fix in there. And then I did a comparison with the Merck manuals and the veterinary manual specifically, and there were sometimes where the types of diseases or treatments didn't exactly line up. It would sometimes give me new treatments or diseases that I didn't even think were there. And other times it did actually match pretty well with what the manual would say. Like, for instance, I looked up zoonotic diseases and it gave me certain ones from water buffalo, and all the ones that showed up with water buffalo actually showed up on my tool. So that was nice. And finally, we end with the reflection where what I learned about my animal was a few different things, like different types of diseases that they were more susceptible to than normal cattle are, and how I didn't know they were bigger than normal cattle. So that did throw me for a loop. And it would, even in my tool, it would literally give me different scenarios where it would say that would need bigger bedding or different types of bedding than a typical cattle because of their size, which was very nice of it to do. And learned about the different types of climates and locations of India. And the tool was somewhat precise. I think it could be better, specifically by giving it better resources and maybe in the future having more open documents for veterinary sources specifically. And maybe in the future use, when it does get better, we could use this. I still wouldn't recommend it to replace a veterinarian. I think they should definitely be the final call on this, but it would definitely help out small farmers and even corporations around the world. Now, here are the resources that I used, and then the resources for the pictures. And finally, thank you for watching and checking out my GTP tool.